Ritual magic is not what you think it is. It isn't spells and potions, capes and cauldrons. It isn't fairy tales whispered to children or fantasies conjured by the desperate. Magic is older than language, deeper than belief. It's the invisible process through which will shapes matter, where attention becomes the sculptor of experience. It's what happens when focus crystallizes and begins to warp the contours of reality, not through miracle, but through mechanics we rarely understand. And you, skeptic, rationalist, empiricist, you've been practicing it your entire life without realizing it. Because magic is not about what you believe, it's about how belief works. Before we can understand how a materialist can become a magician, we must dismantle the illusion that there is only one way to perceive the world. Reality is not fixed, it is interpreted. Perception is the interface through which we access the infinite. The world is a kaleidoscope of lenses, each one showing a different pattern of cause and effect, each one carrying a truth within its own system. Magic thrives not in certainty but in perspective. It is not a science in the traditional sense, but it is a system, and systems can be used. There are 4 major paradigms magicians use to interface with reality, and each offers a unique roadmap to change. The spiritual or supernatural paradigm is the oldest, and to the modern skeptic, often the most off-putting. In this view, magic is relational. You are not the sole architect of change, but a co-creator working in tandem with unseen intelligences, spirits, deities, elementals, ancestors, angels or demons. This notion immediately bristles against the rational mind, trained to reject anything unprovable. The idea of negotiating with invisible entities, offering gifts to archetypal beings, or summoning names of ancient gods can sound not only irrational, but absurd. It feels like stepping backward in time, into superstition. But here's the thing. The more one studies across paradigms, the more it becomes clear that people across cultures and systems are using different beliefs, languages, and symbols to describe similar internal and external phenomena. What the shaman calls a spirit, the psychologist might call a subpersonality. The energetic healer might call a vibration, and the programmer might call a feedback loop. Whether these forces are sentient entities or personified aspects of the psyche is ultimately secondary to how they function in the ritual framework. This paradigm isn't inviting you to believe blindly in spirits. It's inviting you to recognize that beneath the costume of the supernatural is a model for accessing certain parts of consciousness, using the language of myth to interface with the ineffable. The psychological paradigm, by contrast, draws the lens inward. It sees the magician not as a channeler of spirits, but as an architect of the subconscious. Here, magic is a language, the language of symbols, archetypes, and deeply charged emotion. Ritual becomes a kind of dream work performed in waking life. You don't need to believe in anything supernatural. You only need to accept that most of your behavior, perception, and emotion stems from unconscious programming. And the subconscious does not listen to facts. It listens to metaphor, drama, and repetition. That's why lighting a candle and whispering an intention can outperform hours of logical self-talk. It speaks to the part of you that writes your reality behind the curtain of awareness. For the materialist or skeptic, this paradigm offers the clearest bridge into magical thinking without compromising reason. It reframes ritual as a form of symbolic behavior change and positions the magician not as a mystic, but as a technician of the human mind. Rather than invoking spirits, you're evoking dormant parts of yourself. Rather than believing in magical powers, you're engaging the placebo effect, self-hypnosis, ritual psychology, and subconscious neuro-linguistic programming, all with surgical precision. This is magic stripped of metaphysical claims and repurposed as a tool for behavioral transformation. In many ways, it's not a challenge to the materialist worldview, but a continuation of it, carried beyond intellect into the domain of direct symbolic experience. The energetic paradigm, our third paradigm, blends the biological and the mystical. Here, magic works through the movement of subtle forces, known by many names across cultures: energy, prana, chi, orgone, ether. These energies are not metaphors. They are lived experiences, felt in the body, shifted through breath, posture, sound, and sensation. In this view, the magician becomes an instrument of energetic precision, learning to generate, direct, and ground the life force within themselves to induce healing, empowerment, or clarity. But for the materialist, this paradigm can be another steep cliff to climb. Not because it suggests the body holds energy, this is intuitive enough, but because it suggests that energy can be manipulated with intention, like wielding the Force in Star Wars. To the skeptical mind, this model sounds speculative at best, delusional at worst. Studies on subtle energy fields often fall under the label of pseudoscience, dismissed by mainstream institutions because they defy conventional measurement and replication. Still, to those who take up energetic practices, there is something undeniable about the experiential reality.
You may not be able to quantify it, but you can feel it. The heat rising in the palms during breathwork, the tingling after a deep meditation, the electric sensation moving through your spine in moments of emotional release. In Taoist philosophy, martial arts like Tai Chi and Qigong practices, these sensations are not anomalies. They are signals. The flow of Qi, or life force, is as real to these traditions as blood flow is to Western medicine. The meridians mapped in Chinese medicine are not metaphors, but energetic highways cultivated over millennia of internal observation. The energetic paradigm offers a subjective model for working with sensation and intention, rooted in ancient systems like Taoism that emphasize harmony with natural forces and disciplined cultivation of internal energy. It's not about proving anything to a laboratory. It's about exploring the internal circuitry of the self with curiosity, discovering that how you move, breathe, and focus can have profound effects. Then we have the informational paradigm, the most seductive to modern minds trained in code, systems theory, and computational metaphysics. In this view, the universe itself is data. The physical world is an interface, and consciousness is the user. Your thoughts are encoded into the field, and with proper input, the output can be changed. Ritual becomes a kind of symbolic programming. Sigils are compressed commands. Trance states are access points. Reality behaves like an operating system whose parameters are subtly influenced by the quality, intensity, and structure of your intent. This is where simulation theory, morphic fields, and quantum consciousness all begin to whisper the same thing. The universe might be listening. To the hardened skeptic, this paradigm can seem like techno-mystical nonsense, a fever dream for people who've watched The Matrix one too many times. It appears to substitute one kind of mythology for another. Instead of angels and demons, you get code and source files, patch notes, and symbolic syntax. It smells too much like fantasy wrapped in digital metaphors. But dig a little deeper, and something unexpected happens. You begin to realize that these metaphors are old, far older than the digital age. The idea that reality is structured by language, number, and intention stretches back through the Kabbalah, through Hermeticism, through ancient Vedic thought. Our ancestors were not the primitives modern society implies them to be. They may not have had our technology, but they were brilliant pattern recognitionist with complex systems of symbolism used for understanding the nature of reality. The informational paradigm is just the newest skin on an ancient skeleton. It's not about believing the universe is literally made of binary code. It's about realizing that binary code is a symbolic language, representing natural laws and universal forces. It's about understanding that symbols and meaning operate at every level of experience, and that your consciousness interfaces with the world more like a language than a lever. Once you see that, the Matrix stops being fiction and starts looking like a metaphor you've been living inside all your life. These paradigms are not dogmas, they are lenses. They don't need to agree with each other. What matters is this: each one provides a unique path to transformation. And in chaos magic, the most adaptable and stripped-down form of modern magical practice, paradigm is not a prison. It is a tool. Chaos magicians shift belief the way a swordsman shifts stances. One day you invoke an angel. The next you visualize a circuit diagram. Both work because both lead to the same destination: a shift in consciousness that alters behavior, perception, and ultimately, reality. The question isn't, is it objectively real? The question is, does it shift consciousness in the direction I need? Magic in this view becomes a kind of spiritual aikido, a toolbox of techniques for shaping the mind, body, and world. You don't need to believe in ghosts or gods. You don't need to call on celestial beings or channel ancient wisdom. You only need to understand how to interface with the parts of your mind that shape what you experience as real. And that brings us to the core truth. Your mind is programmable. Not figuratively, literally. Your thoughts create chemical cascades. Your emotions shape your physiology. Your expectations filter perception. Your self-image dictates behavior. Change one part of that loop,
and everything else begins to follow. Magic is simply the art of hacking this system on purpose. Your conscious mind is fluent in language, logic, and data. But your subconscious, the part of you that governs 95% of your life, speaks in symbol, metaphor, and myth. That's why rituals work. They bypass the critical filter of reason and go straight to the control room. They implant new stories. They install new habits. They reformat the identity that lives behind the mask you wear in daily life. States of trance, awe, fear, arousal, and novelty. Novelty meaning something new, unexpected, or unfamiliar, something the brain hasn't experienced before. Open the brain to suggestion. These are the neurological doorways through which deep change can occur. That's why the robes, the wands, the candles, they matter. Not because they hold inherent power, but because they help you enter the state where power becomes accessible. They create psychological texture. They mark the moment as sacred. They speak to the subconscious with the urgency of theater. You are not pretending. You are performing a suggestion so compelling that the inner mind accepts it as a command. Imagine this. You stand in a quiet room. You light a black candle. You draw a sigil on the floor. You say, "I release this fear." 4 words, 1 flame, a symbol drawn from your own desire. It seems silly to the logical mind, but that's precisely why it works. Because logic isn't in charge here. Feeling is. Immersion is. Symbolic intensity is the signal. The subconscious responds not to proof, but to significance. This is not merely mysticism. This is behavioral engineering dressed in ritual robes. It is hypnosis through poetry, neuroscience through archetype. A sigil is a command rendered into symbol. You create it from an intention, distill it, simplify it, and charge it with focus. Then you forget it, and like a background process, it begins running in the operating system of your awareness. Days pass, and suddenly you behave differently. People respond to you differently. Your inner world has shifted, and the outer world mirrors it. Was it real? Of course, because your experience changed. This is the secret chaos magicians know. Belief isn't required. Participation is. You don't need to believe the ritual is real. You need to act as if it matters. That's all. That's enough. The subconscious doesn't care if you're skeptical. It only cares if you're immersed. Once it's convinced, the rest is automatic. This is not superstition. It is spiritual technology. And here's the real twist. You're already doing this. Every time you repeat a story about yourself, you are casting a spell. Every time you act out a pattern, you are performing a ritual. Every time you feel something strongly and attach meaning to it, you're initiating a transformation. Magic just teaches you how to do it with intention. The subconscious is not a fool. It is ancient, precise, and immensely powerful. It governs your intuition, your behavior, your perception of time and space. To engage it directly is to initiate change at the deepest layer of being. You don't need gods, you need language. Not belief, but precision. Not truth, but transformation. Forget what you think magic is. Strip it bare. What remains is action steeped in meaning, performed in a heightened state, with the sole purpose of altering perception. That's it. Nothing mystical, nothing supernatural. And yet, everything changes. When you light the candle, you're not asking the universe to bow to your will. You're telling your subconscious that something significant is happening. When you speak the words, you're not casting vibrations into the cosmos. You're disrupting the stagnant monologue inside your own skull. When you step into the story, you are not escaping reality. You are rewriting it. And if all of this still feels like performance, ask yourself, how much of your life have you lived unconsciously performing beliefs you never chose? Beliefs given to you by your culture, your traumas, your fears. Wasn't that a kind of magic too? A darker kind. Unconscious, unintentional, and slowly corrosive. What if this time you did it on purpose? What if ritual was not an escape from reason, but a doorway beyond its limits? And what if the very skepticism that shielded you from illusion had become the illusion itself? You don't have to believe, but you can participate. And if you do, if you immerse, if you engage, if you direct your attention like a sculptor's chisel, then watch closely. Not for signs from the heavens, but for shifts within. Because the deeper question is no longer, is magic real? It's, what happens when you act as if it is? That question is the key. Thanks for watching. If you found value in this video, please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.